How's it going, YouTube? My name is LB Ninja7, your favorite WoW healing YouTuber. And guys, today I'm going to be kind of laying out each healing class and describing why you should play each one. Now, I want to start off by saying the most blanket statement, the most cliche thing ever. I think balancing is actually in a really good spot. I think we're in kind of a golden era in terms of healer balancing, where any healer, you could take it to any form of content, and I think it could do fine. I think there are certain strengths and weaknesses to each one, and that's kind of what I'm going to highlight today. Now, I'm not going to do your typical tier list because I love me a tier list. I know you guys too, but I do have this beautiful, now shield your eyes because this is the most beautiful graphic you'll ever see. I will be ranking every single healer in a couple different metrics, and I'll explain that once we get there. But before we do that, I kind of want to talk about what's overarching, the biggest changes coming to healing, and that is this little blurb of text here, and I'll have this link in the description if you guys want to check it out yourself. It has every single change to every single class. We're not going to go that deep dive into each class, or this will be a 30-40 minute long video. But I do want to talk about how leech, they're saying it's very strong, so they're just going to reduce the amount of leech that your items will give you by 25%, which is, it's nice because it means that we get to do more healing, but it also affects our healing because leech was a very good healing throughput stat, but that's okay, we can do without that. What's also going to be changing is they're also adding 25% to our stamina as well as to the damage dealt by enemies. Now, it seems like put one egg in both baskets and the scale evens out, but it kind of affects us a lot because it means that we're always going to have more to heal. There's always going to be more healing. It's going to take longer to get health bars from 30% up to 100%. So just healers are going to be more busy and have to use more mana in the downtime. So you can't rely on your resto druids as much just to take care of that. You have to bring maybe 2 or 3 throughput healers to take care of that healing. So this is good, and they're gonna keep tweaking this to see when they can find the right amount. But right now we have seen, this change at the start of season 1, now at the start of season 2. Those are the big changes that are kind of going to affect every healer spec. But now let's do a little dive into all the specs and see what's going on. So I have these 4 metrics here. Now, the raid ranking, this is, you could take any class and get AOTC with it, but there are just going to be some that perform a little better or have adapted to these new changes a little bit better. And then there is going to be the Mythic Plus rating. Now, just like with raid, there are just always classes that do a little bit better, a little bit more damage, or can do more healing in an instant, or just are designed for Mythic Plus, or the new affixes that are coming. So that's kind of what that ranking is going to be. Now, fun, obviously this is going to be mostly based on my opinion, but I'll try my hardest to be as even keeled as possible with there. And then safety, this does not mean how safely you can dodge mechanics, because let's be real, druids can have any amount of mobility and they're going to sit in a swirly no matter what to finish that trank cast. What I mean here is safety from blizzard, so safety from being just nerfed into oblivion, kind of like you saw Preservation Evokers get nerfed toward the end of season 1. So let's go ahead and jump into it. And obviously that is based on my opinion. I don't have any insider information from the devs on what they're going to buff or nerf. So let's go ahead and let's just jump into it. So we're going to start off with Preservation Evoker. Now, with that change to stamina and damage taken, they did not reduce the healing from Golden Hour or from Rewind. So they are looking really, really good in raid. Their healing is very, very strong. The question is, do we want to give them the full 5 stars out of 5? I do think so. I think that Rewind is already such a powerful cooldown, and now it's just going to kind of outperform the rest in terms of what it does. It's just a more powerful revival, and the fact that you can cut its cooldown and have 2 charges of it, it's really strong. It's really strong. Golden Hour is very strong for any form of healing. Applying echoes to everyone and stacking up echoes and then Golden Hour everyone. It's just a very powerful healing spec, and they've also been toying around with some Emerald Blossom healing builds, and I think it's very good. Mythic Plus, I do think it's very good, but I do think it doesn't bring as much as some of the other specs in terms of how it can deal with affixes. I do think that some other specs do shine a bit more in that sense, but I do think it's very strong. Big damage, big heals. In terms of fun, I think it's fun. I think Fire Breath's a really cool ability for Mythic Plus. I do think that its mobility is pretty cool. Dream Breath's a really cool ability. I think it's a pretty fun spec. I think all the healing specs are really fun. But for now, Season 2, I think it's very fun. Safety, I I think it's kind of in danger of getting nerfed a bit, especially Golden Hour and Rewind, since they really scaled down some of the other percentage health-based heals, but they didn't touch these. I do think you are susceptible to getting nerfed a bit. So I'm actually going to go 2. I think that this is probably the most likely to get nerfed in terms of that, in terms of those two abilities. Now we're going to look at Druid. Oh, that's not what we want to do. So we're going to look at Druid. And in terms of raid, I think they're doing okay. I think there's a lot of movement in terms of when the damage comes out. You need a healer that can be mobile and heal. So Druid's usually good in that sense. I think they have a lot of range, can heal a lot through that. When there's more healing that needs to be done, having a hot base class like Druid is just going to be very valuable. The problem is that their cooldowns are a little weak. Their tier set does look good, but it has been seeing slight adjustments. It does look very good, but I do think that there are some classes that kind of outshine it a bit, especially in terms of throughput. I think they might probably still be toward the top of throughput, but I do think that some of these other classes bring a bit more utility. Although this does bring some raid buffs, I do think with Feral being as strong with balance, Druid seeing a lot of buffs coming in, I do think that the Druid spot isn't as... it's not promised for the rest of Druid. So I do think their raid is going to suffer just a little bit, but not too much. I do think their Mythic Plus is also in the same spot. They did not see too many changes, if any at all, coming into Season 2 from Season 1. Just a couple slight tweaks to their wild growth, healing it, and some other very minor changes. And that's probably even just I think that wild growth change is going to even itself out, because if you read the patch notes, you'll see why. But honestly, nothing's changing. Now, they were at the top in Mythic Plus for Season 1, but since all these other classes are getting a lot of other big changes and buffs, I do think that they're going to come down just a little bit. They might still be at the top, but I don't think any class is going to be probably 5-star out of 5-star, maybe 1, and we'll get there. But yeah, I do think that they're going to get outshined just a little bit by some other standards. Now, fun, I do think Druid is very fun. I do think it gets old a little bit in Mythic Plus and in Raid, but I do think it's fun. I do think you can experiment a lot with it, especially with the weaving that you can do with it. It can be very fun. So I feel wrong for giving it less than Evoker, but I do think in terms of what I've experienced, I did get burnt out really quickly playing Druid. Maybe if you're looking to play it for 1 season, it could be 5-star. But if you want to have longevity, I don't think Resto Druid is the spec for you. So we're going to go there, and actually we should change the colors. All right, now in terms of safety, I think their tier set's been getting adjusted a lot, so I think you're actually fine there. I don't think their damage is too broken. They do good passive damage. They do good active damage too, but I don't think it's anything broken. I don't think their healing is anything broken, so I just think they're in a good spot. They're in a fine spot. They might see a couple of little tweaks, nothing too egregious though. So now let's move on to Shaman. So Shaman has been really the talk of the town lately. They are put at the top of every tier list recently, and just especially toward this end of Season 1, they saw a lot of hype, and then they were buffed a lot and then brought right back down to reality. So their safety is what I'm actually going to start with. I'm going to put it at a 1-star. They just, for some reason, once Shaman gets one little buff, every player, every YouTuber jumps on it, and it just draws a lot of attention, and you're never safe as a Shaman player. If you main Shaman, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If not, just trust me on it. For some reason, Blizzard does not like to let these guys sit in the spotlight too long, unless it's Shadowlands. They were disgusting in Shadowlands. But let's go and talk about the raid healing. They do a lot of throughput. They bring a lot of good cooldowns too, a lot of utility, but they don't really, they don't break the game with their healing. They're a good throughput spec, a little bit less than Resto Druid on average, but they do bring good cooldowns. Like Spirit Link Totem, it's pretty good. It was a lot better back in Shadowlands once you could stack basically on every single fight. Here you aren't really afforded that luxury as much, but it's still very powerful. They just do a lot of throughput, and their chain heal build is performing very well. And yeah, so I'll put it here. Maybe even if I should have done halves, but we're just gonna do 3. But just know it's probably between 3 and 4. You know what? We'll do 4 because it does look pretty good. Now Mythic Plus, they look disgusting. They're probably the best healing class to perform against the new affixes. They have the Poison Dispel Totem that kind of just makes them pretty much a joke. Their healing is very good. Their chain heal Burst heal is like disgusting right now with all the buffs they can apply to themselves and kind of line them up to where they have multiple buffs on each chain heal and just like blast people with healing. They also blast damage too. Their acid rain is doing good damage right now. Their chain lightning is doing good damage. I mean, they just do a lot of damage for healing spec. They have a lot of utility. Wind Rush Totem from pack to pack, helping your tank out with Earth Shield. Now it gives some damage reduction. They just have it all. They have an interrupt, an AoE knockup, an AoE stun. They're just they kind of are the Mythic Plus spec in my eyes. And since they're so good at Mythic Plus, I actually am going to come down and make the decision. We're going to put them here on... Nope, screw that. We're putting them... They're just good. I'm sorry. Shaman is just really good right now. And they're also very fun. I think just the amount of healing that Chain Heal does, the amount of damage that Acid Rain and Chain Lightning does, it's all so much fun seeing those big bursty numbers. And then they also can just do a lot of hots, do a lot of healing. They're just a really fun spec. The utility, the Swiss Army knife that they are, is just a fun play style, and I think that you would have a lot of fun as Shaman, especially if they don't get nerfed, but I would definitely watch out in terms of how safe they are in terms of getting nerfed. We'll come back to Priests, and notice how I have them both in one section. We're going to get to Monks, so Mistweaver Monk. Now, in Raid, they're doing a lot of healing. They've seen a couple of changes. They've had some talent shifts around, but Ancient Teachings was redesigned. And if you don't know what Ancient Teachings is, it is when they can convert their damage into healing. It's honestly great. It makes their Mythic Plus healing maybe a little awkward, but better in most situations. Their raid healing, it just improves it. I mean, they won't be as spot healy with their kicks, but they will be doing a lot of AoE healing with it. And I think it's very good. Now, it does not outperform the other throughput specs. They don't have as strong of healing cooldowns, and they just don't bring as much utility. They don't have B-Res Lust. But where they do shine is they do bring Mystic Touch, the monk debuff. And there are some raid groups that don't have a monk. Mine included. We don't have a Windwalker or a Brewmaster currently, especially going into Season 2. So my spot is just set in stone as the Mistweaver Monk. So they do bring that, and I think that does, since Monk is very flexible and they're very weird in raid, Brewmasters and Windwalkers, it's very hard to find a spot or a niche for them. That's where I think Mistweavers do shine. Now, they also do a ton of healing. They do a ton of healing, and especially they've been experimenting with some builds. Some of the top-end monks have been experimenting with Yulon plus Clouded Focus, with Rising Mist, and just kind of really bursting healing every minute with a 1-minute Yulon cooldown. I think they do kind of fill a niche right now. If there's a lot of damage every 1 minute, that 1-minute Yulon build could find a place and could chisel in a little spot in the meta for Mistweaver Monk. So that's why I'm going to put them here. I don't think they're broken. I don't think they're bad. I think they're just where they need to be. Maybe could see a couple adjustments, maybe adjust Ancient Teachings to do a little bit more healing or something like that, and kind of go from there. Or split up Clouded Focus and Ancient Teachings so you don't have to pick one or the other. Now, in Mythic Plus, their damage is actually really good. It's not something super disgusting, and it's not something that's going to get them playtime in the MDI, but for pushing keys, they do a lot of damage because they are the DPS spec that heals. So they do good damage, but they do lack Lust, so you have to find that in a DPS. They do lack Battle Res, so you have to find that in 2 other spots, basically, in a Mythic Plus group. They bring a lot of like chain or crowd control. They have a kick, they have an AoE stun, they have a knockback and Ring of Peace, but that's nothing that none of the other healers, that's something that all the other healers have, I should say. I shouldn't use the double negative, but I do think they're very good. They will not be the meta spec, I don't think, unless Ancient Teachings is better than we think in terms of Mythic Plus, but I just don't think it's that much of an improvement in terms of how they want to play, but I do think they're still very good. Now, are they as good as Preservation Evoker or Resto Druid? I don't think so, but I do think they do a lot of damage, and a lot of people just don't know how much damage they do because not as many people play Mistweaver Monk. But that's what I'm here to change. Also, I should say that Mistweaver Monks have the best YouTubers, including myself, so go ahead and hit subscribe if you want more Mistweaver content. But in terms of fun, we are maxing out with Mistweaver. I mean, this is the most fun spec because, like I said, it is the DPS spec that heals. So it's just every button you press can be a DPS button. Like you can just play around Ancient Teachings if you wanted to and still perform at an okay level. In fact, that's probably what I'd recommend for new players who are coming into Mistweaver Monk. But there's also just so much optimization that you can do in terms of your Celestial cooldowns, your Rising Mist stacking, and your Renewing Mist through Vivify, Cleave. It's just there's so much optimization that you can do with this class, and it feels like there's so few people exploring that optimization that there's always room to grow with this class. So I highly recommend Mistweaver Monk. In terms of safety, I don't think their tier set, let me just preface this, they have nerfed the tier set and it feels horrible now. I mean, it's still powerful, it's still like good, I guess, but they put an internal cooldown on the mana that it gives back, and it hurts. It doesn't do what it's supposed to do. It felt like you had near infinite mana when they first implemented that new tier set, and it wasn't infinite, it was near infinite. You could still run out and you were still limited in terms of how many buttons you could press, but it just felt good. It felt like a new way to play Mistweaver where you didn't have to worry about mana, which from what I can remember, every single season we have worried about mana. We are the most mana intensive spec, probably right there up next to Disc Priest. So I feel like they need to revert that nerf, or just do something. So I think you're actually in the ballpark of maybe getting a few buffs in the future. So I think it is safe to play Mistweaver Monk in my eyes. So I think this is what Mistweaver Monk looks like, and I'm happy with that. I think it's very fun, and I don't think there's anything that will be getting us nerfed in the future. Now let's look at Paladin. So Paladin in Raid, I'm going to put as one of the 5-star specs because I think every single raid group will be looking for a Holy Paladin. If your raid group is going without a Paladin, I think you were just lacking. Their Aura Mastery, stacking with their Devotion Aura, giving a big chunk of damage reduction, gains even more strength when the damage that the bosses are doing has been increased by 25%. So Holy Paladin, all of a sudden, just because of damage reduction, gets a little bit more value. Now, let's also talk about their healing. I mean, for a spec that's supposed to be only doing damage reduction and doing a little healing to help that out, I mean, that's at least how I've been told this class is supposed to play from like the years past. They're just doing a ton of healing. They can heal up there with your shamans and up there with your maybe not druids, but maybe not even preservation invokers, but they can do a ton of healing. Trust me. Their new Avenging Crusader is pretty disgusting. They become basically a buffed version of Mistweaver Monk for 12 seconds. And I think it's on like a 45-second cooldown, or you can get it to that. It's just really strong. I mean, they look really good coming into Season 2. I hate to say it, but they are looking very, very good. Now, for Mythic Plus, I also think they're very good. I don't think they're quite to the Shaman level, but I do think they have kind of caught up to Druid and Evoker in the sense that now you're even more incentivized to do damage. Your Avenging Crusader build looks really good. Your Light's Hammer, although it's kind of like a meme of a little cooldown, it does like fine damage now. So I do think their Mythic Plus numbers look good, but I don't think that they can just laugh away some of the affixes like Shamans can do. So they do kind of lose that out. In terms of fun, I do think they are a lot more fun than they have been in the past. That Avenging Crusader build looks really good and really strong and fun. So I do think they actually are in a good spot right now. Their tier set, however, is kind of does lack a bit. If their tier set to me was more exciting, I would definitely give them a 5-star, but we're going to just put them at 4. I do think you would have a lot of fun if you swap to it. Now, in terms of safety, I do think they're very safe. If they were going to nerf something, they might tweak the numbers of Aura Mastery and that 15% damage reduction, but I do think you're very safe if you chose Paladin. Now let's move to Priest, and we're gonna keep them on the same bar, since as a Priest player you do have access to both specs. You just flip-flop between them both depending on their strengths and weaknesses, but we're gonna do them in different colors. So the white will be the Holy Priest, and then the purple will be the Disc Priest. So we're gonna start out with Disc Priest. I do think so the top of the top, Disc Priest looks insane. I mean, they would be the 5 out of 5. It's hard not to put them here just because the amount of burst healing that they can put on the entire raid all at once is a lot if you get that big ramp off. But for the average player, I do think they do lose out a lot. I think they do still a lot of healing, but you are fighting versus your other healers. You kind of want your other healers to know when you're going to do your big ramp, and they don't have to press any buttons. Well, maybe they might have to supplement you a little bit, but they don't have to go crazy. Your druid doesn't have to press Convoke. I mean, your Mistweaver monk doesn't have to use Yulon or Chi-Ji. You need to do your healing in your windows and let your other healers understand that, or else you're going to be fighting versus your other healers, and that kind of makes them a little bit more difficult to give a 5-star. But just know that at the top level, you will see these guys coming big, especially with their new tier set. Their tier set is sick, and it just adds to that big bursty ramping play style that they already have. Now, in terms of Holy Priest, they also do. They also are performing very well in Raid, but it's kind of hard to put them higher than a 3-star because their tier set was disgusting at release. I mean, the amount of healing that you get for free, basically, just for pressing one button and just making sure you're pressing it on cooldown, it was just doing so much healing. So they've really kind of tweaked it down a bit, so it's hard to put them higher than this. They don't bring anything other than PI that any of these other healers do, and it's just hard to put them at the same level as Disc Priest. So I think it's very safe to put them here, because I do think if you're going to be raiding as a priest, you're most likely going to want to be playing Disc Priest and getting more reps there, so you get better there. But I do think it's not a total meme to bring Holy Priest to a raid. I think they're still very good, do a lot of throughput, and are very fun. But we'll get there. So next up is their Mythic Plus. Let's go ahead and do the Disc Priest again. Mythic Plus, I do think they do a lot of damage. I think they handle affixes pretty well, but I just don't think they're as good as Shaman. They're kind of in that same boat as Paladin, where they do a lot of things that you want from a healer, but they don't go above and beyond like Shamans do. So I do think they also fall in a 4-star. Now, Holy Priests, they do a lot less damage. They do good healing, and they can still handle all the healing that you need, but they just don't do a lot of damage, and that's really their downfall. And especially in terms of Mythic Plus, I think a lot of Holy Priest players were hoping that your tier set would give you some amount of damage. Same with Mistweaver monks. I guess we also I don't know. I guess maybe I'm just salty about the nerf still. I should probably just get over that. But as a Holy Priest, you just don't do a lot of damage, and that's kind of what you want. You don't bring any more utility than Disc Priest. You just bring less damage. You don't bring any more healing, maybe a little bit more, but still, it's just nothing worth going into. You shouldn't be pushing keys as a Holy Priest and thinking that you're going to get as far as a Disc Priest, I should say. Maybe I'm being a little harsh there, but it just lacks damage. There's nothing else to it. All right, so now let's talk about how fun they are. Let's start off once again with Disc Priest. So I do think that the playstyle of doing damage to heal is so much fun. That's why I personally play Mistweaver Monk. But I do think that they suffer a little bit from Resto Druid Syndrome, where they kind of can get tired. You can get tired of playing this spec pretty easily, because once you've done one ramp, or once you've done the same ramp 20 times, it probably does get a little old. So I will be putting it here. Personally, I would give them the 5-star, the full 5 stars, but I think the average player would probably agree that they're about a 4-star in terms of fun. Now let's get to Holy Priest. Holy Priest, it's grown on me a lot. If you've been watching my channel, they've grown on me a ton. I do think they are very fun to heal in Raid. I do think they're very fun to heal with in Mythic Plus, although their damage lacking is just, it's just brutal. It's tough. So I personally would think that they're about a 4-star in terms of fun. The amount of healing that you can do, single target is fun. Their AoE healing is fun. They just lack damage in Mythic Plus. I think in Raid they are a full 5-star, but their Mythic Plus damage and just people just not wanting to bring Holy Priest in their Mythic Plus groups does bring them down quite a bit. In terms of safety, we have seen a lot of nerfs to the Holy tier set, but the Disc Priest their Disc Priest tier set is looking really good at the top level. So I think if it were to get nerfed, it would probably be while the world first push is going on. So I do think they would land at about a 3 out of 5 in terms of Disc Priest, because I do think that you could be susceptible as a Disc Priest player to some very early nerfs. But then in the long run, I think for Season 2 as a whole, I think they're probably going to end where they're starting in terms of power level. Now for Holy Priest, I think you're probably going to see some buffs. So I do think Holy Priest is the full 5-star. In fact, let's do this in reverse order to make it a little better. So let's do it like this. So I think Holy Priest, I don't think they're very powerful right now. I think you're going to see a lot more damage buffs come in. Hopefully, that's what I'm really hoping for, is some damage buffs. I do think that their healing is still very good in Raid. I think they've kind of found it to a good level now. They've really been adjusting that and working on those numbers. So that is where I'm going to leave the Priest charts. I'm actually pretty happy with that, and I think as a Priest player, you're just very safe. And I think their average, well, I guess their average is the same. They have the same amount of stars as Paladin, but I think that's fair. I think your average is going to be higher as a Priest player because you have both healers to choose from. I think if one falls short in Raid, you can choose the other, and if one falls short in Mythic Plus, you can choose the other. So I do think they are just the safest to play. So these are my overall power rankings. I hope you guys enjoyed this video because I wanted to try something a little bit different than your typical tier list, because I figured all the other YouTubers aren't going to be making tier lists. Let's try something new, and I think this little graphic is pretty cool. Let me know what you guys think. If you guys completely disagree with me, I would totally understand, because there have been so many changes in the past few months. It might be that I'm just missing something and I haven't been able to test every single healer spec as much as I would have liked to, because I work a 9-to-5 job. But guys, I really appreciate you watching this video. If you liked it, make sure and hit that like button. Let me know what you guys are planning on playing in Season 2, because I will be slamming some Mistweaver once again. And if you guys want to stick around for some Mistweaver content or some general healing content, I have so much planned for Season 2, so make sure and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of it. And guys, that's going to do it for this video. Let me know what you guys think down below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.